I'm deeply honored to be here with Jen Thompson, a strategic business leader with experience in media and tech and enterprise who drives business performance through operationalizing strategy across an organization. Jen's worked for Google and YouTube. She's a board member. She manages global operations, fosters sales growth, and develops talent. And right now, she is an advisor and consultant for startups, working with founders on founder-led sales, especially in the B2B space. Jen was also a key part of my favorite ever elective experience at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. We were put in brand new teams in a brand new country, had to interview over 100 strangers about product ideas before pitching a new product to a panel of investors like Shark Tank on steroids. Jen was one of those investors. Jen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to see you again.
I'd like to give you a chance to tell the audience about your story, how you arrived where you are, and then how you ended up being on that panel for that faux Shark Tank experience.
Yeah, of course. As you introduced me, I've spent greater part of 18 years at the intersection of media and technology in various commercial roles at Google and at YouTube. You talked about the sales, operations, go-to-market. I'd say most of what I've been known for is leading teams through periods of change or organizational transformation, so builds, pivot, turnarounds. I also launched and led a female founders and women in tech startup community here in London. I'm based in London, transplant from the Midwest. And through that lens that I really started getting involved in the startup world. And what I came to realize in all of the different hats that I've worn is I really just love being a champion of helping people realize their ambitions. So whether that's as an organizational leader, bringing a team and a business toward a common vision, or as a thought partner with founders to help drive their business vision. I sit on the board of a high growth ad tech company. I also advise founders on B2B and founder-led sales. I mentor sales leaders that are in scale-ups or large organizations who are sort of in the middle of transformation and how do you navigate and lead through that change. But it was actually in my role at Google where I met Craig Wortman, who's a professor of the entrepreneurship course that you had taken. And Craig and I know each other because we worked on transforming the entire sales training at Google globally. So I was his customer. We worked together and got to know each other very well over the course of a handful of years. And when the course was coming to London, I got the most amazing message saying, "Hey, friend, you want to come sit on a judging panel?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely. One, anything for you." We've worked closely together and I trust that whenever he asks for my time, it's going to be totally worth it. And two, it's just so much fun. The energy around startups, the innovation that can happen when you pressurize a team to solve a problem in such a short period of time. And so there I was. It might have been stressful for you, but I was having the time of my life sitting on the other side of the Shark Tank.
As you're sitting there, hearing pitch after pitch come your way, what are the things that you're focusing on?
I mean, if it were a real investor conversation, obviously the numbers and the product have to be really important. But I would say by the time you get to pitch stage, that's table stakes. The numbers should pan out. The product should have good product fit. So I boil it really down to storytelling. What's the problem? Why do we care about this problem? What's the solution? And what's the impact that this solution is going to have? And the one that I feel like people leave out is why you and why now? And to me, it just boils down to that and how you put those together in a story.
Now, you mentioned something about product fit a moment ago. A lot of folks here might have experience giving speeches or debating. They might understand the why you and the why now, but they might not know that term. What is that and what's an example?
Why you and why now? Why, Iain, are you the best person to solve this problem? Even if the product is great, if someone else had a similar solution, why should I invest in you? So that comes down to your passion, your experience, the team you put together, your approach. And it's really selling you as a person that I'm investing in. All sales comes down to you're buying from a person. One person is buying from another person. So the product is important in the story, but you are just as important in the story.
There might not be a dogmatic rule about this, but one of the things I was looking at recently was Kamala Harris putting together her convention speech in the book Fight, an insider's look at what happened in the 2024 election. And there was a lot of debate about how much do I talk about myself versus my policies. What do you think is the right approach for pitching?
I think it comes down to your customer or your audience. Actually, this is one of the things that I think differentiates a fine pitch from a really good pitch. I would call the policy the product there. And a good pitch or a fine pitch will talk about the product. But what really makes it go from good to great or fantastic is how you turn that into the lens of the customer or the group that you're talking to. So it's not just about, I have this product that's going to do this, it has these features, and here's how much money it will save for America or for your company. These are the problems I hear you talking about. And this is the pain that I hear it's causing for you or your company or America. And this is how this is going to solve for that pain. And I call this policy X or I call this product Y, but putting yourself in the customer's shoes. So whether that customer is a buyer at a Fortune 500 company, whether it's a consumer in a supermarket, or whether it's a voter ready to go to polls.
What we had to do for that project was talk to a lot of folks who were just kind of man off the street, strangers that congregated around places related to the assignment. In my case, it was folks who are business travelers. Aside from doing those, get out of the building, find the man on the street, see where they are, do empathy interviews, how else can people try to get this information so they can understand the real problem that real people are experiencing?
There's such value in having the actual conversation, but there are other ways to get that. You can do desk research for sure. You can definitely do desk research to get like more mass opinion. There's social dialogue. You can do that through forums. I get a lot of forums on LinkedIn on like, hey, I'm doing research at such and such university and we're looking for people in this demographic. Like, can you fill this out? So you don't have to physically have that conversation or pound the street. That's probably the most scalable way I've seen that happen. But some of the unique ways that I've seen the conversations happen is divide your customer or potential users up into different segments. So you have your common user, like the everyday folk. In this case, it was travelers. But then maybe you have someone who's an expert in that topic. Maybe it's a pilot. So then you have your group of pilots or flight attendants. And then you might have someone in a quirky way related to that topic. Maybe you have a group of people who need extra assistance when traveling, or maybe you have a group of people who serve as high net worth individuals that are traveling. So like some sort of quirky angle to that topic. And I think when you start to look at the splitting customers up instead of just the average Joe or the masses, you start to get very interesting perspective and how you might go to market or how your product might provide even better solution than what the guy next door is going to create.
That's true, the average Joe or the average Jane. And to break it up, we've got the average person who might use it, we've got the expert, and we've got the quirky use case. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%.
This is maybe putting you on the spot, but it's an example of a product that exists from some brand that most people would know. And either tell us how you think they went about talking to the average person, the expert, and the quirky segment, or a product that we all use, but you don't think they've tapped into that quirky segment, and you've got some ideas about how they might.
Oh gosh, you are putting me on the spot. The first thing that pops to my mind right now, I have a 3.5-year-old, and I've been experiencing the world and products very differently now that I have to truck along a child and all the stuff that we schlep along with us. I think about things like cars, just the features in a car. Like, is the cup holder big enough to fit a child's water bottle? Where do I put my purse or the diaper bag so it's accessible? So I would say in that aspect, like the mom with a child or the dad with a child would be the quirky example on how what you're creating can fit the outside use cases.
That makes a lot of sense. I was looking at Shark Tank a few days ago and I saw an old product from an old season. It was putting a barrier in your car so that things couldn't fall through down to the floor. And I would imagine that is more of a problem if you're juggling more physical items, and that's more likely if you've got a bunch of kids, I'm guessing.
Yeah, interesting.
That makes a whole lot of sense. I love that as a heuristic. Makes a lot of sense. We've talked a lot about some good practices in pitching. Are there any other best practices we haven't covered yet?
So I think when we talk about storytelling, There are just a couple of things that stand out. So we talked about the customer as the focus as you're telling the story, but one good framework that's helpful to use is just called the from to story. Here's the current state from this, and we're going to go to X, this future state, or X to Y might be a better way to describe it. But when you start talking about a from to story, you invite imagination. So you can empathize with the current state with the customer, but when you start describing that future state, imagination gets people out of the rational brain and into an emotional brain. I think that's a really great structure to think about storytelling when you're describing what the future state could be. So, for example, that might look something like, here's a pain point of all these travelers that we're going to solve for, and here's how we're going to solve for it. And this is the impact that we're going to have. But when you start talking about the impact, you can say, now let's go back to average Jane and Joe. Here's how their travel experience is going to be very different from what they experience today. And you're going to paint a new picture and tell a different story. And that's just a better way to tie, I guess, your product coming to life, but it gets the tingles going.
I'm feeling tingly already. A lot of time spent in Northwestern on there's three major sorts of benefits. There's functional benefits, there's emotional benefits, and there's financial benefits. So the product is this for you. It'll make you feel this way, and you will save this amount of money if they're trying to compete on it's cheaper. Do you conceptualize the storytelling to state, that is the benefits, as distinct from those three ways of describing them?
I would say the way that you structure the story is based on the pain points that come about in your due diligence. And so there's going to be, of those three segments that you just talked about, when you speak to your customers, whether it be creating an innovative product or whether it be selling your product to a business or a consumer, there's going to be something that you hear on that is the pain point, whether that be functional, emotional, or whatnot. So I would keep the story in the theme of what you get in your due diligence.
Got it. So those are best practices in pitching. What are some things that good pitchers who might understand good customer research, they might understand good storytelling, but they fall just a little bit short? What are some things that they should start doing that they're not doing right now?
I think one, check your pronouns. So instead of we can do this, I can do that, it's about them. It's not about you. So check your pronouns. I would say another is the framing of either avoid a risk or get a benefit. If you want someone to change behavior, you want to frame stuff on the risk if you don't do anything. That would be like the next level move versus, and the benefit you're going to get is that. Well, benefits are good if you want people to keep doing or do more and you're trying to get them to grow a share of a pie. But if you really need them to change behavior and do something a bit more transformative or radical, you would talk in more risk language.
What are some examples that spring to mind about things that could be framed as benefits, but they're better framed as risks?
So let's talk about AI. People know the benefits of it. And there are some companies that, or leaders that I've spoken to that are a bit slower to move. They want to get things perfectly. If I were a company trying to sell and to get a business to transform more quickly, I would talk about not just the benefits of using AI in their organization. Like they know that there is something keeping them from moving forward. So I would frame it in such a way to entice action.
The way that it might work for AI, imagining, it's not as if AI is going to triple your productivity. It's that AI isn't going to take your job. Someone who can use it better might take your job. Don't be left behind.
Or like you have all this talent in your customer service department. You're risking not getting the most out of them because they're spending their time doing something a machine could do. You're risking your competitors having top quality customer service and being more efficient.
Makes a lot of sense. We've talked about your story, some best practices, good versus great pitching. Any other common mistakes that come up?
So there needs to be a so what and a call to action. I think the worst pitches I've seen are like, thanks, I'm happy to answer any questions. It should be a dialogue. You should have a call to action and you should anchor that and go big with what you're asking for. obviously justified behind all the due diligence and numbers that you've done, but don't forget to close.
And on the close piece, when someone's going big, to what extent should they also say, blah, 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 this is the big ask, but these are with the most conservative projections. Even with this, we're so good. Or does that additional layer does not matter?
I don't undermine what you're asking for. As long as the story adds up and you're really bringing value and solving for a pain point, then you have all right to put that value in front. And the conversation isn't just about money. Like that's the one contentious topic, but it's also about the service around it, whatever other negotiable items you put on the table. So no, don't undermine the ask by that softer language.
I love the word undermine because I think that a lot of people undermine themselves either early on or they undermine themselves so much they don't even get started. They never even reach the early on stage. What would you say to somebody here who's considering being an entrepreneur? Right now, they've got a 9 to 5. They're okay with it, but they think they can do something else. They've wanted to pitch to people. They've wanted to be on the Shark Tanks of the world. Not so much very step-by-step advice, but just an emotional piece of advice to help them break through. What would you tell this person?
I have a very dear coach of mine that used this phrase with me. I'll pass it along. Her name is Lola Wright. She's based in Chicago. How good are you willing for it to get? How good are you willing for it to get? And if you just sit with that question a little bit, you might think, well, things are good now, but are you willing for it to get a bit better and a little bit better? So I would say, get out of the way of your own possibility.
If people want to work with you or to just follow you and to see how good they're willing to get, in this case, how can they do that? Where can they reach you?
Definitely LinkedIn is the best place to find me. When you post this, maybe you can put my short URL in it, but it's Jen Thompson on LinkedIn. That's the best place to go. Website coming soon. This is gent.com. More than happy to connect. If you're a founder looking for support in B2B sales, you are a founder, have a great idea, but don't know how to sell, happy to chat. If you're a sales or operations leader looking for mentorship and advisory from someone who's been there, done that, also happy to talk about what advisory might look like. I'm just really happy to explore how I can help others realize their ambitions because how good are we all willing for it to get?
Jen, your time is precious and your expertise is invaluable. And on behalf of everybody listening right now, thank you so much for sharing it with all of us.
It's my absolute pleasure. If this helps just one person, then that's the dream. Thanks, Iain.
Thank you.